Welcome back, troops. Let's tab 59. So the question is, does NATO, and specifically the UK, have troops, have boots on the ground in Ukraine? So let's look at it. So it's been nearly 1,000 days now since the Russian forces mounted their special operation into Ukraine. 1,000 days. Prior to that, when the Russians annexed Crimea in 2014, in 2015, February of 2015, UK forces started an operation called Operation Orbit. It's quite well documented. What was Operation Orbit, for those of you who don't know? So to say, Operation Orbit was mounted in February 2015, and it was in direct response to what happened in Crimea. And the idea was that we would put troops out there, initially small numbers, I think 30, then it moved up to 70 troops, and it grew from there on as time went on. And Operation Orbit was basically delivering UK-style military training to the Ukrainian forces. So really basic stuff, basic training stuff, infantry skills, a bit of intelligence gathering, medical skills, logistics, supply details, that sort of thing. Some real basic stuff just to try and bolster them up so that they would be better able to defend their territory if there was an invasion, which we know there was. So Operation Orbit grew and grew and grew, and 3rd Battalion Rifles were out there. They rotated people around every couple of months. And then as it got close and Russia started to build up its ground forces on the border with Ukraine in Belarus, and we all remember, most of you remember that the Russians saying, no, it's an exercise, it's just a normal exercise that we're training with up in Belarus. When it got to the February, so about a month before the special operation went in 2022, UK forces pulled out because there was obviously a high risk at that time that there'd be a no-notice invasion by Russia, and there was in the March. So British pulled out, Operation Orbit ended, and we know that Russia were in there, started coming into Ukraine. That was in March 2022. In July 2022, we then instigated a new operation, that's the UK forces, called Operation Interflex. Operation Interflex was basically the same detail, same sort of training, a little bit enhanced maybe, as we did before in Operation Orbit, but this time it was in UK mainland, and it's still going on now. We're still training Ukrainian forces. So I'm going to get to about having troops on the ground. Just bear with me. So let's look back a little bit of history, because what we're looking at, what we're talking about here, is a proxy war. And if you look at, let's say, Vietnam, United States out in Vietnam. When that first started, US forces sent out military advisors. Same sort of thing maybe as, in a way, you could draw a parallel to Operation Orbit. So specialist military advisors went out there training up the South Vietnamese army because of the threat from the north. And then gradually the United States got drawn into the conflict and started, we know the history, they started throwing thousands of troops and everything at it. Big prolonged war out in Vietnam. The Russians, or as they were then, the Soviets, the USSR, were definitely 100% on the ground. Now, those Soviet forces may not have been in the infantry role, fighting in operations directly against the United States forces, but here's what they were doing, and here's how we know. The Soviets had around about 3,000 troops in Vietnam in North Vietnam certainly, operating Soviet surface-to-air missile systems, and they were shooting down American aircraft and killing American aircrews. Fact. Knew it at the time, but it was confirmed after the Cold War ended. I think it was around 1991, when the Russians admitted to the Americans that yes, we had 3,000 troops out there roughly, maybe more, and they were using Soviet missile systems to directly kill American pilots and aircrew. So there they are, having a direct influence on a war, proxy war. I think we can also safely say, although it might not be documented, I think we can also safely say that when Russia invaded Afghanistan in 1979, that the United States was certainly, along with other countries, certainly supplying arms and training and money to the Mujahideen to fight the Soviet invasion. We know that as well. And I'm pretty sure that, although I've not found any documented evidence, but if you look hard enough, I'm sure you can find it somewhere, that the United States had boots on the ground. Probably special forces, probably CIA as well, on the ground, advising the Mujahideen, and certainly with the Stinger missile systems they were using to bring down Soviet aircraft and helicopters. So there's two examples of proxy wars. Now, morning. Another one. Busy today. So, back to the question. Do we have troops on the ground? And considering other proxy wars that I just spoke about, I think we'd be pretty naive to think that there isn't somebody out there. Now, of course, with this Ukrainian International Brigade, that most of you are aware of, lots of ex-soldiers, or some that aren't even military trained, have gone out to Ukraine and joined Ukraine International Brigade, Legion, whatever you want to call it. Now, if you look online at some of the pictures of these fighters, whether they're from Canada or Australia, the United States, United Kingdom, yes, they're wearing a little Ukrainian flag patch on their arm, but many of them are wearing their own national flag. And we know also that British fighters have been killed out there fighting for this Ukrainian International Brigade, and some have been captured. So of course that's playing right into the hands of the Russian propaganda, because they capture or kill these troops and put them on display, and you hear them speaking English with an English accent or Scottish accent, British, whatever, or American accent, then it's sort of shown that they can use that to say, yes, NATO have got troops on the ground. This is a British soldier, this is an American soldier, whatever. So that's not working in our favour at all. So there's that. But of course, I'm pretty sure that those ones that have captured and killed and they've displayed them on TV are no longer British soldiers. They're out there fighting on their own behalf for Ukrainian forces. That's what we think. Now, here's another one for you. We'll leave you with this one. So about 7 months ago, so what we're talking about March this year. In March this year, some German officers from the Luftwaffe were talking on an unsecure system, and it was picked up by the Russians. It was about a 25-minute, 30-minute conversation, and they're talking about British troops being on the ground in Ukraine advising and assisting in the firing of Storm Shadow missile systems. And that's a system that's pretty handy. It's the ones that we're saying don't send them into Russian mainland. It's a strange old reason, isn't it? So we're saying to Ukrainians, yes, you can have Storm Shadow, but don't let that weapon system go inside Russian territory. So this is intercepted. Russians thought, ha, brilliant, got a propaganda coup here, can use this badger. When the British were asked to comment on it, Tobias, whatever his name was, what's his name? Gone now, back in March, he was in the government, the defence guy. God, Elwood, Tobias Elwood. He was angered by this conversation being picked up between these German officers, Luftwaffe officers. And when he was asked to confirm it, he did. He confirmed back in March this year, 2024, there was a small number of British troops on the ground in Ukraine. He didn't say what they were doing, didn't say how many there were. Well, I can assume from that, we should be able to make an educated guess from that he's talking about British troops assisting with Storm Shadow missile systems. So in some ways, you draw a parallel. It's very similar, going back to what we said about the Soviets in Vietnam, operating missile systems, anti-aircraft missile systems in their case, against American aircraft, killing crews, bringing aircraft down. So if our guys are out there, and he's admitted they were, back in March certainly, using Storm Shadow missile systems, those missile systems are obviously destroying Russian positions in Ukraine. Have we got special forces out there operating? I think, again, we'd have to be pretty naive to say we haven't. To say that we haven't got British forces, special forces out there. That's not all the time, maybe, but certainly out there from time to time, having a mooch about, doing what the old sneaky beaky boys do. I'm pretty sure they're out there as well. So that's my take on it. I think, yes, might not be in a fighting role, as in on the front line. We wouldn't want to risk putting our troops, if we've got British troops on the too far forward, where there's a risk of being captured, because that would be a massive coup. As I say, they've already captured some British ex-soldiers that are fighting for Ukraine, and they're using that to their advantage. If we got special forces out there and they were captured by the Russians, it'd be a massive coup for them, wouldn't it? So I don't think our troops, if we've got them out there, are right up on the cutting edge front line. I don't think there's that going on. If they are, it's very risk calculated before they do that. So interested to know what you think, or what you might know. You might know something more than me, I'm sure you do. I don't know a lot. But that's my little take on, have we got British troops, or have we got NATO on the ground in Ukraine? Of course we have. Oh, absolutely we have. They've been out there for a while, I'm sure of it. And they'll continue to be out there for as long as possible. As long as it takes, I'm sure. But let me know what you think. If you disagree with me, have a go at me and tell me. Tell me I'm wrong. Well, I think we have. Anyway, it's enough for me. Get on with my tab now. Pick the pace up a bit. So, stay safe, everybody. If you're new to my channel and you haven't subscribed, please consider it. I'm not saying do it. I'm saying consider it. Till next time, troops, and it won't be long. Remember, stay safe, take care, and let's tab.